You're listening to Black Parents Aging, where we help you navigate caring for aging loved ones. Every Wednesday, we'll discuss how to help your parents successfully navigate this new season of life. We are going to talk about legal, health, technology, and finances. Here's your host attorneys, Olivia Smith and Nicola Robinson.
Hi, welcome back, guys. Another episode of Black Parents Aging. I am so excited. I have my friend, our guest, Dr. Epps, back on the show. I told y'all when we ended the first part that we were going to have to do a part two because Dr. Epps is so full of information. She is just my go-to, my girl, when it comes to all things Alzheimer's and dementia. And it was just so much that we couldn't even get to in the first part. And talking to Dr. Epps, I already know we're going to probably have to do a part 3 and a part 4. But today we're going to focus about her work with Faith Village Connection. So Dr. Epps, tell the people what that is, and I'm just going to turn it over to you. Go ahead.
Turn it over to me. Well, thank you. I don't know about I'm full of information. I'm full of stories. How about that? I know I got some stories for y'all. But thank you for having me back. And I want to talk about we talked a lot about dementia overall and what the things to watch out for. But we also know I want us to talk about how important the church and how significant the role of the church is for families that are facing dementia or going through this journey. And the reason for that, me and Nicola was talking offline about how foundational the church is for so much. And, one thing that wasn't going on in the church, people would come and talk about heart, blood pressure. No one was coming in to talk about the mind.
Yes.
And talk about memory issues because again, that was so hush hush. It's almost like in our culture, not just our culture, several other cultures, it's like a taboo. It's a curse when someone loses their mind and their memory.
Yes.
And if you do a lot of reading, you'll see that even right now, people still lock up their family member and maybe chain them to the bed, because again, they don't understand this and they're like, oh, so-and-so is cursed and things like that. And now it's time for us to break that.
Yes.
We need to break that silence. And one of the things with the collaborative that I did with some young ladies, I was like, you know what? We're going to the church to break this silence. And we started off with just providing education to the church leaders, to their parishioners, congregants, and even opening up to the community. And it was eye-opening. I really seen changes right there in the educational sessions. Again, when we become educated, become more knowledgeable, we feel like we're ready and we can take it on. And I just think it's really key for our church that is serving the community to know what's going on in its community.
Yes.
So they need to know how the deacons, the deaconess, sister so-and-so, brother so-and-so might have this. We need to watch out for this, because a lot of our members in the church, they're aging.
Yes.
Right.
And a lot of churches are struggling because their parishioners are aging and they're not getting newer parishioners. So if nobody's looking out for the ones that are aging or sister such and such not coming as regularly as she used to, and she doesn't have family around her that's checking on her either, that might be the responsibility of the church to go and see about her.
Yep. I really think, we call that a care partner team.
Mm-hmm.
So caregivers, you don't feel like you have to do it all. You form a team, and we can talk about that in a little bit, but your church is part of your team, and just for that reason, what you just mentioned, if you don't live near your mom and stuff like that, you can call on your church and they can check, and they know how to check. They know not just to pick up the phone. You good? No, we educate the churches on those signs and symptoms as well. We educate them on how to communicate with someone who may have any memory impairment or have a diagnosis of a form of dementia. I'm not going to, I always don't say, oh, someone has a diagnosis of dementia, because we know Black folks, a lot of us don't go to the doctor. We don't get this diagnosis, but if someone becomes forgetful and have memory problems and challenges, yeah, let's use that. There's certain ways you want to approach them and communicate with them. And we educate the churches about that. And, as we're looking after our aging parents and our aging relatives, we really need to also look at their church.
Mm.
And I feel that we should hold them accountable. I really do. And I go out there and I say that. And some churches, but some like you're right. You know, we need to be accountable for that. And so we can help and support these families, just not that person with dementia, but also to support that caregiver,
Yes.
that primary family member that is doing all the care. There are certain things that we can do. And all of this that I'm saying actually led into me developing a program, and it's called the Alter program, where we're shifting the perception of dementia in the faith community. And we're giving them a tool. So now we actually partner with the churches. We give them financial stipends to put
Okay.
things in place, y'all, so they can support us as we're caring for our parents. We can call them and say, this is what's going on. We need help. Like, what's the resources and stuff like that? Because again, everybody cannot reach me.
Mhm.
Everybody can't reach you, Nicole. But they know how to pick up the phone and call the church. And if the
Right.
church knows about our resources and they have things in place, then in return, they can, help the family. And what's been happening is the family, and it's happening, and I'm so happy. Family calls the church. The church leader just a couple of weeks ago, I would think it was right before Christmas, the bishop called me. And I welcome that. That is fine because he knew who to come to.
Right. And I think that that's a large part of the problem is we don't know where to turn. We see the signs, we think that something might be going on, but we're not equipped and then we don't know where to go.
So,
And so we kind of just leave it alone. But I
yeah.
think we've always been able to rely on the church. If you fall behind on money, you go ask the church for some money. If they got the food pantry if you're missing food. So we've always looked at our church as a resource. And now we need to start looking at our church as a resource when it comes to health and aging as well. Let's go make sure we reach out to them so they can point us in the right direction. I think we hadn't done that in the past.
No, I agree with you, and that's the whole purpose of what I'm doing. And I just say I'm walking in my purpose now. This is my ministry.
I love
Is for me to make sure the churches have the resources and that the faith leaders are equipped and knowledgeable of what their parishioners may be going through and
yeah.
what to look out for. One bishop came to me and we think they know everything.
They supposed
I think
to.
my bishop, yeah, he's supposed to know everything. He's supposed to know stuff all about me, and I don't even tell him. Like, come on. But they don't. And one bishop said, he came to the education and he said, oh my God. He came there because his top deacon stopped him in the vestibule and they had a mirror wall.
Hmm.
And he said, Bishop, who's this man looking at me?
Oh, wow.
And it was his deacon. And so he did not know how to respond. And so, if there's anybody that's listening to this podcast that is a faith leader, it's important because you can be like, that won't ever happen. He probably never thought that would have happened. And he did not know how to respond because he had no clue what was going on. And
Mm.
these are the examples that, I share. And then I also want to make sure that the churches are there again for these families because a lot of us was raised in the church. We had to go to vocational Bible school. We just did everything in the church. And now when we need the church, we feel that they're not there for us. And then we
Mm.
become angry at the church, right? And then that may impact our faith and our relationship, with God or the church. And so you see how to me, all of that is interconnected, related.
Absolutely.
And I think it's very important. So I want the churches like, no, we need to be there because I've heard where families say, I got so mad at the church because they stopped coming to pick up my mom. you know,
And that is
or
that Dr. Epps, because once somebody does start showing the signs, like the inappropriate behavior that we talked about, those personality change. So if
yeah,
she in the she in the congregation cussing and carrying on, and for people who don't know that that's what she's dealing with, they're like, "Oh, she has lost it and she's inappropriate. She don't need to be
right,
here anymore." So talk
correct.
a little bit about that. Like, how can the church help families not only who have a family member who has the diagnosis, but help the congregation understand and embrace that person and still welcome them in and make sure that they're still a part of the congregation?
Yeah, so there's several things. Y'all gonna have to call me. You want your church to be part of this because it's like becoming dementia friendly. And
Okay.
so one of the things, for especially for that person living with dementia, is us trying to re-engage them and understand where they're at, where that capacity level is,
Mhm.
right? So if they're to that point where they do have these outbursts and stuff like that, well, maybe we need to have something modify something that would better support them. So I work with a lot of churches with modifying worship service, or even I worked with a bishop and we did dementia friendly online worship services, especially
Okay.
now since we're at home.
Mhm.
And so to offer that, so those with dementia can still get spiritually fed, but it's modified to meet where they are
Mhm.
for those 6 to 10 minutes. So there's certain things when we do partner with churches that we work with them to put things in place, not just like you said for that family caregiver, but also for that first person with dementia, so they can still be engaged, still get spiritually fed, and it
Mhm.
won't feel like we've outcasted them.
Mhm. Is there any science or research that talks about, like, people needing to stay engaged? We had an episode previously about how social isolation and loneliness is really, it affects more than just, "Oh, I feel sad, I'm by myself." It actually impairs your health. And so is there any research that maybe talks about, after having that diagnosis, needing to stay connected to the community, needing to stay in those routines? Like, if your mama go to church, Bible study every Wednesday, church every Sunday, and now has this diagnosis, is there something that says, "Hey, that helps her with that diagnosis?"
Yeah, and it's basically those familiar places, those
Okay.
familiar things that is really key. And I'm not gonna, it's like help with the diagnosis. I always look at it, just makes that person's life easier,
Okay.
right? Because they're still able to engage in that familiar activity. And so, I have a lot of research that's faith based. And one of the things is I was asking families that are affected with dementia to come to church, and I would observe them. And they
Mm.
were very hesitant just because, like, we don't know what he gonna say. Do all of these different things, but I'm gonna do it just for you. And I'm so thankful they did it just for me, because when that person came into that familiar environment, they were like, "What?" The family member like, "Wait, you fooling me? You don't have dementia." But it was that familiar environment, and you can see that they were smiling. It was a place that they knew, and
Mm.
they knew just what to do. They knew when to stand, when to sit down, when to sing, and if they shouted, it was it was really okay. It really was, because it was appropriate, and that was just so surprising to me. But they knew, because again, it was that familiar environment. The sermon, the churches they went to were dementia friendly churches, so they already knew what biblical stories and how to deliver the sermons. And so that's one of the things, is making sure it's a church that is educated about this, and they knew what biblical stories or passages to say, cue that person's memory.
Mm.
And I had a family, a daughter's like, "I didn't even know my mama was paying attention." And we having conversation about the Bible. And so to me, those are powerful stories, because that shows me how important this is. And I try to tell a lot of caregivers, especially those that are in their 30s and 40s, the younger generation is not quote unquote as religious this is what the research statistics say, as the older generation,
Right.
sometimes we don't see the importance of church,
Right.
and we're spiritual, and there's different ways we meet our own spiritual needs, but it's not the same that our parents. And so if we're caring for them, we're doing our own thing. We're not being considerate of what's important for them. And they're missing that piece. And if I feel like as I go out and educate, if we can recognize what was important for our parents and try to get them back engaged in those things, then things will be much better, because then they'll be happy to attend these religious activities or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And you won't have to put up a fuss and a fight.
It's so amazing you said that. When we do planning, we do estate planning for older adults, church comes up a lot. And they'll ask about, well, if something happens to me, I want my kids to know I still want to go to church. And so we have to sometimes put that in their planning documents to give that direction to their children, because they recognize that their children may not go, have a regular church attendance,
Mhm.
or even, a part of a spiritual community. But we have clients who they're like, no, that is that important to me. That is a huge part of my identity. And so they want to make sure that is documented in just their estate plan. So I can imagine with a family who now has a family member dealing with dementia, and if that was a part of their life, they would want that too. Maybe they didn't get around to writing it down in their documents like my clients, but they would want to still have that continuation.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm so glad you shared that with me, because I didn't know that they would actually put that. And so that really makes the case of this work that I do with the faith communities and families make it stronger and more meaningful. And if anyone is listening and want to have their church work with me, or if you just as a family want to participate and get those dementia friendly online worship services or whatever it may be, because I'm also have developing meaningful religious practices that you can do in a home setting, right?
Okay.
That is showing that will show be able to show improved outcomes for that caregiver and for that person living with dementia. So, y'all, please give me a shout out, call me, email me, or whatever it may be, and I can share these resources with you, because I mean, I just think it's really, really important that we recognize this, for our aging relatives, and how important that is, and how to make sure that we can still have them stay connected.
Yeah.
And it just may look different for each family. It's going to look different, and that's what we make sure we tell the churches, and they need to know their community, who they're serving, and we put things in place with them so they can really serve their community. And it's been great. We've been able to train church leaders, send them for additional training. Like, we really, again, y'all, this is my ministry. This is my purpose. I really want to make sure that they have the tools, the knowledge that they need. So when we do call bishop, or we call rev, or pastor, father, whoever, and we say this, they know how to respond, and they know how to where to direct us. Even if it's my phone number, that is perfectly fine. But they know what to do.
Mhm. So, Dr. Epps, we know you're here with me in Atlanta. For
Yes.
people who are listening who are not in Atlanta, are they able to access these resources as well? Do you do trainings, especially now because we do
Yep.
everything on Zoom, it feels like, but are you
Mhm.
able to do trainings for church members and leaders outside of the Atlanta area?
Yeah. So, I hate that the COVID-19 pandemic came around, but it also opened up opportunities,
Yes.
for us to be a virtual. And now I have to say a lot of my programs are nationwide now. So it
Yay!
doesn't matter where you are. We even partnering with churches outside of Georgia and giving them the resources, and then we connect them to additional resources in where they are. We're working with families. We have families in California, Illinois. I'm working with places in Virginia to put some of these things in place. So no, it does not. You do not have to reside in Georgia.
What about denomination or faith? Like what religious, I grew up Southern Baptist and I go to
Yeah.
non-denominational now.
Same
Are you
here.
within just the Christian faith, or do you
Yes.
work with all faiths? Okay.
So for right now, I'm within the Christian faith.
Okay.
And I'm looking to expand. If there's anybody online, that want to bring it to another faith and see how things can be modified, or just want to talk to me, I'm open to that. But for right now, just the Christian faith is what I'm addressing and
Gotcha.
working with those churches and families.
Well, thank you so much. Before we sign off, is there anything that you want to make sure we touch on? Because me and you, we can
Yeah,
do this all day.
well, I just want to make sure if I can have 5 minutes, I was bringing up care partners and caregivers a lot. And I just want to make sure that, caregivers, anybody that's listening that is active caregiver, that the resources that's out there. And there's a lot of educational programs, and they're online. So it's not, and you can do it at your own convenience, on your own schedule. It's self-paced is what we call it. And I just wanted to give my number, tell y'all to call me, because I have one, I designed these courses, and I'm working on one just for Black caregivers.
Yay.
Especially during a public health crisis. And Nicola, you'll be part of that. So I'm just giving it.
Okay.
So, but we have these programs to address a lot of things that caregivers go through, and they need to know about, right? And they don't have time to sit to a session, but it's a course that they can enroll in. And so I just want, if anybody wants to know more information about some of these courses that they have, they're about 6 weeks long, but they're self-paced. So you could take it, the videos are maybe 7 minutes long or whatever. But if you was to do a piece of it every day, it'll last about 6 or 7 weeks. So I just wanted to kind of mention that, and again, put my number out there, 678-723-8188. And then you can also email me at epps@emory.edu.
And listeners, I'm going to have all of her info and how to reach her and how to even find out more about Faith Village Connection in the show notes. So before we sign off, is that it? Do you want to talk about anything else? I know I got to have you back on. I think there's going to be a part 3, y'all. We haven't even really touched on caregiving and what that's like. And I think that there might be people out there listening to the show who is currently a caregiver. They may have already moved mom in with them, or they're thinking about moving dad in, and what that would look like and what resources and supports are out there. So I know that we got so much more we need to talk about in part 3. So I'm going to beg Dr. Epps when we get off this episode and see if I can convince her to do a 3rd part, y'all. If you have not already done so, please leave us a review, subscribe to the show, check us out on Facebook. If you need to share this episode with people, please do so, because I know that some of y'all are listening and they're like, oh, my cousin need to hear this for my auntie and this, that, and the other. So please, please, please share the show with other family members and friends who might be going through some of this stuff, who might have a family member that has dementia and hasn't figured out how to navigate any of this and how to incorporate that family member's faith. So thank you again for joining us for another episode of Black Parents Aging. Thank you again, Dr. Fayron Epps, for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. That's it for now, y'all.
Thanks for joining us this week on Black Parents Aging. Check out our Facebook group at Black Parents Aging, where we go live to answer your questions. For more info on today's topic, check out the show notes on our website, srlawgrp.com. If you know someone who could benefit from today's episode, please share a link to the show. Subscribe to the show to catch new episodes and leave a review. Until next week.